Hello, YouTube. This is VidHead85, and welcome to a few stories of malicious compliance. Malicious compliance is pretty much following the letter of the order, while following it gives a unintended consequence to those who issued the directive. This first one is hilarious, and I call this. Wait, this looks familiar. This is from Redditor Joel the Conner, Conner. 4 years ago on a trip, I, husband, booked our hotel as I usually do. I am what you would describe as thrifty, and I don't like spending a ton on hotels when we're basically just sleeping there. The hotel I booked for this leg of the journey was probably not the most high class, and sure, it was not in the safest area of town. This was definitely a hotel where some acts of questionable legality and morality occur. In my defense, it was a very last minute booking and we were supposed to be staying with family, and there were very few options available under $150 a night. The stay there ended up being fine, but my wife gave me grief. It has been a long running joke between us for the past 4 years. We are now visiting for the first time again in 4 years. I went to book the hotel and my wife said, "No way, it's my hometown and I'm doing it this time." So she pulls up ye old Priceline and starts looking at prices, specifically looking for a place with a pool for the littles. She looks at one, reads the reviews and details, and said, "It looks good, especially for the lower price." She even calls to make sure the pool is open because of COVID. I look at the photos and look back at her thinking she was making a joke. She was not. Cue malicious compliance. I just smiled and said, "Whatever you think, babe." As we approach the hotel, I see a look of confusion slowly wash over her face. She says, "Wait, is this?" and trails off. I reply with a resounding, "Yep, it sure is." She booked us in the same exact hotel that she had been grieving me about for 4 years. I laughed and laughed and laughed. She cannot believe she did it and also thinks this is hilarious. I am vindicated. This one is hilarious to me because the wife is just like, "Oh, I hate this. I don't like this. This is terrible." And she goes and books the same hotel. When I saw this, I was like, TLDR, wife gives me grief for 4 years booking a hotel, and then she proceeds to book the same one. So this next story is, I call it the early bird. My boss loves to call me at 6:15 a.m. to ask me if I would like to fill the shifts of people who just called in sick. This is an everyday thing. I was bored and frustrated, so I decided to volunteer at 3:30 a.m. to call this same manager and to ask me if they needed help. He got super pissed and tried to write me up for it. I showed the GM the timestamps of the calls I had received. I don't get calls anymore. Yeah. I mean, she was being proactive. Why not? At least she was trying to get it out of the way much earlier. This next one is Talking to the Dead. I titled this Talking to the Dead. My father died on Father's Day 2012. He was divorced and living alone, and I am his only child. So that means I had to wrap up all of his affairs. This story centers around us trying to get his utilities canceled. I called in to see what we had to do to get them to cancel. The lady I spoke with on the phone said to send in his certified death certificate. I sent in the certified copy of his death certificate the next day. The next month, got another bill. I called again, and a new woman answered. She said that because I wasn't on the account, that she had to speak with the account holder. I informed her that the account holder was dead, but she would not budge. I had to make an appointment with a supervisor so she could speak to him herself in person. So I showed up at the Board of Public Utilities with another death certificate and his ashes in a clear bag that they returned his remains in. I plopped them down on the center of her desk, and she said when she talked to him to tell him that I loved him for me. The woman went pale, flew out of the chair, and called the cops. When they showed up, she claimed that I had assaulted her. And yes, my dad's remains were still sitting in the middle of her desk with the death certificate. The cops questioned me as to why I would do that. I told them the story. The supervisor's boss was called in, and they all stepped away from the desk for a private talk. While they were talking, the cops came over to talk to me. They said that I shouldn't take human remains out in public, but there were no laws broken. I said that I agreed with them that it was very extreme, but she insisted she'd speak to him in person. By then, they were done talking between themselves. The supervisor's boss kissed up to me and got it taken care of. But that's not the end of the story, though. I had to call back a few days later to get the utilities back to the house in my name. When the person on the phone saw the address and my name, I was immediately put on hold. The supervisor's boss that finally helped me got on the phone. She sucked up to me and waived all of the fees that come with setting up utilities. Just as the call was ending, she informed me that she was again sorry, so sorry for the employee's lack of compassion. She said the employee was terminated, and again, she is so very sorry. Um, this is definitely a Karen. This is definitely an entitled woman who really takes her job much too seriously here. All I would have been like, okay, is like, okay, you sent in the death certificate. You can get it out of his name now. That is some Bolshevik that she had to, that, or at least they had to plop the ashes onto the desk in order to get her to take his name pretty much off the utilities. That's crazy. Malicious compliance story number 3, I call it soup a la the way you like it. Kids can often be difficult when their eating habits are concerned. So this story is, you don't want veggies in your soup? Got it, kid. My kids can be picky eaters at times. My wife makes some damn good chicken soup, but the kids were complaining that there were veggies in their chicken soup. They hate veggies. Veggies make me sick. And they wanted my wife to pick them out of the soup. We tried to tell them that good chicken soup needs veggies to taste good, but they were stubborn. I'm sure other parents can understand. I told the kids, if you really hate the taste of veggies, I'll make soup tomorrow, and you guys can make sure I only put stuff in that you like. They liked that idea at the time. The next day, I get the pot filled with water, all the typical soup ingredients out, and gather the kids. I asked for their approval on every item. Chicken? Yes. Salt? Yes. Black pepper? No. Gross. Too spicy. Celery? No. I can't even stand the smell. Onions? No. I went on with that, with them rejecting parsley, bay leaves, and other veggies. The total contents of the pot ended up being chicken, water, salt, noodles. After the soup was done cooking, I served it and they excitedly started to eat. A few funny faces later, and one of them said, "It tastes weird. This isn't very good." I said, "But I only put in everything you guys approved. I think from now on, I should make the soup, right?" They looked at each other and said, "Can we have mom's soup instead?" Since that day, they haven't complained about finding veggies mixed in their food. Sure, they almost always eat around a carrot or a green pea, but they understand that it adds flavor. This next malicious compliance is absolutely a great one to end on. And this is called, I call it, take this job and shove it. See you in 15 minutes. I worked for a medical transportation company that had a contract with Medicaid. One of their many rules was that you could not provide assistance to the patient inside of their house. One elderly lady had an old house with a very small foyer that you had to climb 3 steps to get to the main floor. The only other entrance was around back and up 2.5 flights of rickety steps to an old deck that opened into a bedroom. Upstairs, she's in a wheelchair. Common sense says to take her in the front door, and she's home on the level she lives on. Medicaid says to take her up the outside stairs, dump her in the bedroom upstairs, and let her worry about getting down to the living room level. We ignored their policy and took her in the front doorway. A random inspection by a random inspector showed that we were not in compliance. We appealed. The inspector came out and saw the different options and decided that we had no case for the appeal. take her up the outside stairs. Nope. From then on, when the driver arrived at her house, he would get her out of the van in the sidewalk, then get onto the radio and tell his boss to shove his stupid job. Now that he was no longer an employee, he was free to assist this lovely person in the front and up the stairs. She was a little worried that we just told our boss to take this job and shove it, but when we told her that being off the job was the only way to help her, she was a little more relieved. The boss was always understanding and took them back, but carefully noted the 10 to 15-minute break in their employment to show that the company was already in compliance. So, I jumped this part here. Once finished, they would come back to the van, tell the boss they reconsidered, and ask for the job back. Okay. So the aftermath. We had contests to see who could have the most dramatic "I quit" scene. Medicaid noted our activities, but couldn't put a handle on how to stop it. Malicious compliance achieved. So this one I really like because sometimes it's really crazy that they had to go that route to help somebody. And Medicaid was made to help people, especially the elderly and the people who don't. Vulnerable people should have, like, honestly, I always believe in universal health care, the Bernie style health care that he put forth, Medicare for all, where we would have no premiums, no deductibles, no co-pays, and it would be free at the point of service. Now, the only reason that a lot of people hate this is because, one, fear of the unknown, and two, the fact that it sounds like socialism, but face it, socialism, we have a lot of it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you soon, and thanks for this episode of Malicious Compliance.